So Ray, I have been waiting for this conversation without you knowing it for like 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. So I've been following you on Instagram. I know your story and I
Exactly.
was waiting for you. So it's like, this was like when this email came, I was super excited. One, because I love your solution-based approach. And I'll
Thank
tell you
you.
what I mean by that. So many people do clickbait to focus on the problem, to get their
Yep.
views up and their followers
Yep.
up. And you go, here's the problem, here's the fucking solution, period.
Yeah, I'm a
Period.
manager first, man. That's how us managers have to do, bro. Like we got to solve problems on the
Fast.
fly. So, and it's crazy that no one sees that. It's funny. I discovered you a few years back, and I was watching what you was doing. And you know, it's a lot of people who talk about what they do on the internet, but I remember like, so I always look for like the real guys. Like,
Right.
okay, someone is talking, I'm like, okay, they're talking from experience, not because you know, some people are able to teach, but
Yes.
that doesn't mean they're able to do, right?
Correct.
Like I think it's a saying that they say, it's like teachers teach because they can't do.
Those who can't
And
do teach.
yes, exactly.
That's the one.
Exactly. I was watching this I was watching this movie last night. It's called The Leftovers, starring
Yes.
yes. And it's about the teacher, and he was like, you know, teachers, and then that quote was in it. I was like, damn, that's deep.
It
Like,
is.
you know, teachers that the people that can't do teach. So when I saw you doing it, I was like, oh, this guy does. Okay, I could tell he does. And
Well,
that's what made me follow you and like really like tap in. I was like, I've been watching what you're doing. I love it, bro. I appreciate it.
it's interesting because I'm a big fan of practitioners. The people, it's like, we'll just use JR again as an example. It's like, okay, here was a guy who has been doing it that decided to teach it. Here's
Yes.
Grandman Sean, a guy who's been doing it that decided to teach it. So what's interesting is when I left Taylor in 2008, every oil dad in Texas would show up with their teenage daughter and a blank check, thinking that was the magic formula because her dad had money and
Yes.
she was the teenage daughter. I'm like,
Yes.
nobody asked me about the work ethic. So I started Googling how to get a record deal, how to get a publishing deal, how to find a manager. And all I kept finding were these old interviews with people like Clive Davis. And no one was talking about the internet. No one was talking about the ability to kind of do it yourself. So I read a book that I'm going to encourage you to check out. It was called The Millionaire Messenger by Brendan Burchard. And the concept was make a difference and make a living sharing your knowledge and experience with others. And that
triggered, I'm about to buy it right now. What's the name of it? The $1 Million Messenger?
The Millionaire Messenger. And it triggered me to sit there and go, wow, I got 15 years in radio. I've worked at major record company. I just helped launch the biggest star in the world. And I love to teach. Shit, this could be right up my alley. And then I went all in on digital marketing. And I said, how do I take my 30 years experience, create courses, create books, create coaching? And that's kind of what I've been doing. And then what's funny, and you're going to love this coming from the major label system, and I will not mention the label, but I get a call 2 months ago, and it's the president of the label. And he's like, listen, he says, I'm watching your independent artist kick our artist's ass. He says, will you come in and tell us what's broke? I said, yes. I said, first he wanted to just blow up the digital and marketing department and fund me to start an agency. And I'm like, no, let's not go there. I'm 57 years old. I'm not ready to start a multi-million-dollar agency. I said, but first, why don't I come in and identify what the problem is? So I go into this label and I start meeting with different people. And I asked them, I said, hey, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What's your job? What's your responsibilities? And I would hear things like, wow, you're the first person that's ever asked me that. I'm like, excuse me? So 7 years earlier, I had been consulting the label. They had just hired a new VP of marketing and a new person. And I'm like, I need to step back because these gentlemen need to come in and be able to put their own footprint on it. It's not fair to hire a new guy and saying, by the way, here's your consultant. It's like, no. Let them do what it is that they do. Let them experiment, let them learn. So what they were doing 7 years ago that was wrong, every time someone new got hired, they were never trained. And that's what I identified is they were doing what the person before them did, which was wrong. There's no systems and processes in place. There's no training. And I started laughing. I said, when I'm going to talk to Ray, he's either going to shit his pants or go, no, that's typical when it comes to artists that sign themselves to these labels and trust that they have the right people in the right positions to help them get to that next level.
Well, that's the hardest part of, I think, what your job and my job is. It's kind of like, you know, we're in the room teaching you how to take over the world. I mean, we could easily be teaching you from a label standpoint,
Sure.
But we understand that what it comes with. We understand, you know, the amount of, like, I don't know anyone that works at a label that's happy right now. I don't know anyone that works at a label that's happy, that feels fulfilled. I mean, unless they're like year one, you know what I mean? But once you get to that year 3, 4, and once you understand what it is, everybody's unhappy, because it's really not about winning as much as it's about being in control of everything going on. So, you know, even now, like, I got an artist assigned to me, and now he has a buzz, and now labels are calling him, and he's like, well, they only calling me because of what I did. And I'm like, well, I called you when you didn't do shit. I liked you when no one liked you. Like, now all of a sudden, because they like you, you think like they like you because they like your numbers. They don't like you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
they like your business.
Yes. So, you know, it's a frustrating place to be in, because you know what you're saying is right, and you just know that, you know, it's like, the hard part is hoping that you find a tailor.
Sure.
The hard part is hoping that, and to be honest with you, Rick, that's the main reason why I started talking on the internet, because in our world, you're only as valuable as the clients you have. And I always managed offensive linemen. Like, I managed the guys that made the quarterback look good. I didn't manage the quarterback.
Right.
So I was just praying for it. And I was like, I'll just be it myself. I'll just be it myself, because, you know, the deal flow, the options, the opportunities that come your way from having a famous client. I get those opportunities now just for myself, which is even better for me, because now I can keep authentically being myself rather than having to take a job and wondering what they want and all the other stuff. Because I never want to take a job again, at least not at a label. Like,
sure.
I wouldn't. It is like being an Avenger but not saving the world. Right. It's like everybody treats you like Iron Man, but I can't do shit.
Right.
Like,
or they don't give you all your powers.
Yes.
You know, it's like they hold your best powers back. And you're handcuffed. You know, what's interesting is I always tell people, I said, listen, you may find me because of Taylor, but you better be asking, what have I done for people just like you? Because that situation was unique and it was different. And no two artists' career paths have ever been the same. No. If it was freaking duplicatable, you and I would be on a street corner selling this shit like crack. But it's not duplicatable. And there's no do A and B and you get C. I told a dad one time, he came in, and I don't want to use the word hate because that's pretty strong, but when people with money who are business owners come in and think that they're going to fix the music industry, and I'm like, let me explain something to you. I said, you're trying to function in a dysfunctional business. I said, rule number 1, the consumer does not have to pay for the product. I'm like, think about going into Costco, trying the sample, then grabbing the bag and leaving. That's what happens with music. I said, number 2, you cannot throw money, manpower, and resources to fix it. You can in almost any other business. I said, and the best talent doesn't always win. Now, what's your solutions to fix it? And they're like, fuck, I'm out.
It's so crazy when you hear it. It's so disheartening from the outside when you hear it, but from the inside, you understand exactly why. Like you have to have the right mentality on top of having the right amount of talent to win.
Yes.
And it's a lot of people that have talent, no mentality. The right mentality, like it takes the Mamba mentality, if you will, for you to win and want to keep winning. Like for you to feel like it's something more to go for. Like, okay, we won that year, but how do we win more this year? Knowing the work you put in, it's just hard to find, man. And when people do, it's a blessing. And that's why you got people out here taking people artists like that, because it's so hard to find.
Right. So and then when you get them, they don't remember, like what you just said a second ago. Hey, remember me when you had nothing, and now you're letting all these people over here get in your ear. And I tell parents all the time, I say, listen, let me just explain something to you. I'm going to say something that you've said 100 times, and your artist is going to hear it for the first time because it came from me. Please don't take it personal. That's just the way things work. And as a manager, I was talking to Joe about this. I said, when it's going great, the label and the artist take all the credit. When it's going like shit, the manager is the one that gets the blame. And we understood that going in. You know what I mean? It's like we understood that going in, because I had to explain to someone one time, the artist is a lot of times, especially at the higher level, going to think that everything's going great because they don't know the fires that the manager's putting out every single day. So they only see the good thing. Talk about that a little bit. It's like when you're working with a new artist now, and we'll forget about the past. When you sit down with a new artist now, they're going to think, Ray Daniels, connected. It's going to be easy. He's going to get me my publishing deal and my record deal in like the first week. How do you have a realistic conversation? Because there's a lot of independent artists that would love to be on your roster that respectfully, you don't have enough hours in the day to represent everyone. What conversation would you be having with that fresh artist with talent? You've identified them on what the next 6 months is going to look like from a work perspective.
The first thing I tell, first of all, I appreciate that question. The first thing I tell every artist and every creative that I work with is, I need to love you when you're poor. I need to love you today, because when you get rich, I'm only gonna like you. And if I only like you today, when you get rich, I'm gonna hate you. And I'm not in the business of building Frankensteins that come back and kill me. So you got to be a good person today. And I'm going to remind you of the person you were yesterday, tomorrow, if I see a new person that's damaging to the current situation. A lot of artists want to work with me, and I'm such a straight shooter. I'm like, there's nothing that I can do besides show you right from wrong. Like, that's all I really can do in my position, is say, hey, this is how they do it, and this is how you're doing it, and show you right from wrong. I do believe that has a lot of value, but I do think that the problem is that these artists come to people like us, we show them what to do, and they're like, I could have did that myself. Well, that's kind of the purpose of what I do. I'm showing you how to fish. That's right. That is the most honest thing any human can do for another human, right? Like, and show them how to do it themselves. And to me, I'm in the business of building artists and building talent to do it themselves, because I can't enjoy my life if I got to babysit yours, right? And I want to enjoy my life now. Like, I want to like I'm in New York for some other business right now. It has nothing to do with music, and I'm so excited. Like a kid in a candy store, I'm about to open up a store in Atlanta, and I'm so excited looking at the product, and I'm like, oh my God! And it's like, you know, for me, that is just because I know that product I'm about to invest in is not going to talk back.
Wow.
And it's like so many, and I think that just because every artist is not created even equal the same way every athlete is not created equal. Right. Where it's like Michael Jordan has something in his head that made him different from the rest of the players. Yep. And naturally, we watching it, you know, as a kid, you just think he's the best skilled player. But it wasn't skill. It was something that he did before the game, during the game, and after that made him different. So when talent come to me and say, I want to be like Tehran, I'm like, you better off studying Tehran than me, because there's something in his head that won't allow him to stop.
Right. And
that's what you're going to need more than anything. Like, because if you're not doing that, then what are we doing?
Sure.
So, you know, to answer your question, a lot of people come and say, hey, man, I want to work with you. I want to do this. And I'm like, bro, you don't know what you want to do yet. You just want to win, and you think that I'm a vessel to help you win. But as soon as you find out that I'm going to make you do the work, you're going to resent me. And once you start resenting me, then it's going to make this relationship go sour, because now you resent me for doing the work that eventually made you great. So the question is, do you want to be great? Because if you want to be great, I'm the guy to work with. If you're just trying to make some money, I'm not the guy for you.
Right.
Because money comes and it goes, but it has to be something in here that says that's not enough. And it's like Will Smith tells a story in his book. He said his first check was $1,500. And he said most people would have thought to themselves, like, that's no money. He was like, nah, whatever I did for someone to cut me a check for $1,500 to keep doing this, I'm going to keep doing whatever it is to make sure people want to continuously cut me checks. And here he is 40 years later, 30 years later, Will Smith. You know what I mean? So it's like, so for me, I just want artists to understand that. That's why I like talking to you, because they see us and be like, oh, this is going to be good. Well, we're saying the same thing. Mirror, say hello to Mirror, because all people that have won understands what it takes to win. And if someone's telling you all you got to do is this, this, and this, they're lying to you.
And they're the ones, unfortunately, that are out there chasing whatever is getting an artist's attention at this particular point in time. That's when Clubhouse lit up over, COVID, and we were all on there. And I mean, I can tell, if I had $1 for every time I called bullshit on somebody hiding behind a microphone, pretending to be something, telling people that they needed to spend $1 million on SEO and whatever the hot topic was, I'm like, you got to be shitting me. I mean, it was like there was so much nonsense going on. And that's kind of what's happening now. And the same guy who wrote the book that I told you about, The Millionaire Messenger, Brendan Burchard, he has a quote. He says, when opportunity knocks,
I already bought it.
There you go. It's hard work that answers.
Yep.
And everybody thinks that opportunity means less work. They mean, it's like, hey, if I get to work with Ray, that's a great opportunity. No, that means more work. The difference is Ray's going to tell you the work that needs to be done. And our job as former managers and mentors and coaches right now is to let you, the only thing we can speed up is the learning process. We can't speed up success. We can't speed up money, but we can speed up the hard knocks. We can speed up the recovery process of the injuries that you are going to get along the way. And I always tell people, I said, I'm like the blue tent in NFL. Come sit out a play with me. Let's make sure your brain's all great. And then we'll put you back in, because a lot of you are just coming in beat up, but you never go into the concussion protocol tent to see what the problem is. You just keep going out there, making the mistakes over and over. I'm like, we're the blue tent. Come in, let us evaluate you and let you go back out and start this thing fresh again. Most of you just like getting beat up. I was going back and I was laughing because somebody came to me, and it's like, I'm kind of almost glad that Black Music Month passed before we had this conversation, because I never want to spotlight someone based on their pronoun, their skin color. I always think great is great. Ignorance does not discriminate. I know plenty of people in all walks of life that have positions that are dumb as shit, and stupidity has no bias. It's like, I just want to talk to smart people. I just want to talk to solutions-based people. And when that thing happened, I'm like, I'm really glad that this shifted, because I don't want to spotlight Ray to my audience because it happens to be a month. I want to spotlight him to my audience because he's a fucking badass and he can solve their problems.
I'm the same way. I'm like, you got to be excellent first before you do anything else.
Exactly.
And then be Black excellence, or be female excellence.
Exactly.
But you excellent first. And I'm all about that, bro, because, like, the real world doesn't work like that. The real world is done based on how great you are at what you do, and how much and how dedicated you are in honoring the process of being great.
Well, like, you said something earlier too, and I was telling an artist this one time. They were, all of a sudden, it's like, when I started doing the online thing, and it was like all these older artists, age-wise, started coming to me thinking I was their hope. And I'm like, if your music sucks, I can't help you. I said, and here's the cool part for all of you listening today. The internet does not discriminate. The best music that gets heard, people don't know if you're fat. They don't know if you're Black. They don't know if you're ugly. They don't know anything except that emotion that you were selling got them. Now it's up to you. And this is what I tell people. You handle that part. I'll take care of what happens at Discovery, because at Discovery, you guys are missing a lot of great opportunities. Absolutely. It's like, so you get that part right, then I can help you with this part. And now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think mediocre music can win anymore. I think there's so much talent that's available to us. It's like mediocre, it's just hard to cut through with playlisting and some of that other stuff.
So Tehran had a statement. He said, it was so good. He said, mediocre music is bad, great music is good, and bad music is great. And what he said, because he said, in the world of 150,000 songs being uploaded, good ain't good enough.
Right.
And great ain't great enough.
Right.
You have to have something different in what you're doing to stand out. Like, whether you like that Tommy Richmond song, I ain't never been the same. Whether you like it or not, you haven't heard anything like it.
Right.
And that's what makes it different. It's so mediocre music doesn't work. And I don't even think great music works unless you're just a great artist and you just dedicated to being just a great artist. So like I think about like artists like the Three Sacred Souls who have the song "Can I Call You Rose?"
Yeah.
And like it sounds like it was made in the 70s or the 60s, but it was made in 2023 and it was a hit. And you can do that. I think you can do Bruno Mars style music. I don't think that there is their music has a time on it now. I just think it's about staying true and staying consistent and allowing God to enter the room, because we don't talk enough about how we're all on God's timing. Like, no, if all of us can make something happen at the press of a button, look how all of our lives will be way different. We're all working our butts off and praying and hoping that something great comes from it eventually. That's all we're doing, right? So, you know, you got to give those seeds that you're putting water on the plants a chance to fully blossom into what you think they're going to be.
Well, and that's why I think you got to take so many at bats, you know, because all of them put so much investment in one song, one video, one PR campaign, thinking that's this is my best song ever. And if this song don't, it's like, no, you just got to put at bats. And it's like the people that I know, people are talking about TikTok a lot of the people that I know on TikTok, they're just throwing out hooks and whatever hits. I mean, Russ and Caitlin, that didn't happen until after it hit.
Yep.
It's like here's this beat that I've got. Our buddy Kato, same way. It's like they just continue to get to bat. And so many people are like, dude, I wrote the song of my life. I'm like, do you have 10 more to back it up? Because once people find you, we live in a Netflix world where we want to consume and love on more. And what I was telling people when I said, you know, mediocre just doesn't cut it these days is because where we have to go to get the eyeballs now, be it TikTok, be it playlisting, be it wherever, you're competing against the labels. So let's just face it, they have bigger budgets than you. They've got the best mastering, the best mixing, the best whatever. That's who you're competing against. So this song that you did in your living room, unless you're Billie Eilish and her brother, might not compete, but not all of you are Phineas either. So it's just managing expectations, I think, is probably the hardest job that I have these days, is because people see that it's been done and they think that's the norm instead of understanding that that was the exception. You know, when Lil Nas X popped off, that was the exception. When this happened, that was the exception. It's not the norm, but they want to treat it like it's the norm and say, okay, Ray, put together the plan for me how that happened.
Yep. And I'm glad you said it. It's very unfortunate how people think that like their path, everyone's path is theirs. It's amazing me how many people don't sit back and ask themselves what's their past. I give you an example. I was an A&R for this artist, and I'm gonna use Taylor. Taylor was actually the example. I wrote about this in my book. So I'm working with a specific artist, and when you Googled her name, it said why she isn't Taylor Swift. Like, you know how Google gives the recommendations. We're in the studio, we're trying to figure out how to make a record on her. She's already a pop star in Europe, but she's trying to cross over here. And I remember just like we given all these songs, and then I remember I Googled it and it said why she's not Taylor Swift. And I was like, let's stop there. I said, let's listen to Taylor's first single. And she's talking about she wears short shorts, I wear sweatpants, she does these things, I do these things. And I said, you're who she's talking about. We should answer that song. And we answered it with a song called It Ain't My Fault that went 4 or 5 times platinum. Wow. But the point is that for everybody that loves Trump, there's someone that loves Biden. For someone that loves Trump or hates both of them, there's someone else to love. Like, we have a world where you have choices. You just have to be, instead of focusing on I'm not that, then be the opposite of that. What is she saying, right? So when the song goes, it ain't my fault your man's looking at me. It ain't my fault your man where I'm where your man wants to be. Like, that was the lyric of the song, but it was a direct response to that, right? It was like, it was our way of thinking. So when I'm talking to artists, I'm like, you have to find, it's all about timing, but it's all about messaging, and it's about like moments in time happening right now. And it's like, whether it's, I'm looking at the news right now and I see everybody talking about the hurricane coming. Even if it's the hurricane that everybody's worried about, there's an opportunity there. Like there's, the world creates opportunities for us every day. We just have to tap in and say, how would I talk about that? Like,
no, it's great, because I tell people all the time, I said, you need to get involved in conversations that are already happening Stop trying to always start the conversation. So I always say to people, it's funny, you just brought up television. As I say, when you look at something, what emotion does it trigger? Go into your Rolodex, find your song that triggers that. Let's talk about the hurricane. What's going through people's mind? Fear, concern, loss, overwhelm. What song do you have that can tap into that? You know what I mean? And you don't even have to make the song the focus. You could just say, hey, hoping and praying for all of you that are in the path of the hurricane, have your song playing in the background as an original sound that's happening with that, and say, hey, I wrote this song. Have you ever experienced, have you ever wondered, I wrote this song about it? And that's subtle marketing. It's marketing. You always have to market. You always have to sell. You may just not be asking for the order at that particular time, but good branding. And that's the problem I identified right away when I got to the label. As I said, the problem is everything's promote. And marketing is lifelong. Branding is lifelong. And I said, what you guys have now, what you're not taking advantage of, is this thing called catalog. And this catalog is, you can take catalog to get in today's conversation. You don't always have to write the best song today. It's like, go look back and they're like, oh, we didn't even think like that. I said, yes, because you've got people working in the business that don't understand. It's like, if I hear one more old person tell me, we hired these kids because they understand social media, I'm gonna slap them, because you better hire somebody that understands marketing. Because anybody can post. My mother-in-law can now post on Facebook and Instagram, and she's 91 years old. So don't tell me just because they know how to post, they should be in that position. They better know marketing, and they better know the difference between marketing and promotion. And then the artist needs to sit back and say, wait, it's my business. How can I look at it and go, that doesn't work? That's not right. They're afraid to speak up. And I'm encouraging them to speak up, especially with these licensing deals that are happening right now. They all get excited because they'll hear things like, yeah, but I get to own my masters. I said, but wait a minute. You just did an 80-20 freaking deal that happens to somebody who just got a big advance, and the record label had to fund the making of the record. You just gave 80% of a project that you already paid for. You're a moron. Just because they told you what you wanted to hear, that you get to own the masters, that was your only income stream, and you just gave it away, you knucklehead. It's like they chase these words, Ray. What's up with that?
And it's funny because the only thing that we can't do as managers is lie. Right. At least, it's like, it's the, like I mean, there are some who do it, but ours is rooted in truth. And labels can. And they do. I signed the biggest deal in Warner history at the time. A new artist. I signed, and I went to the CEO and I said, hey man, so I just signed him. So I had a plan. I said, look, I need to bring in someone younger from the someone youthful, because the artist, he was 17. I'm like, I'm 40. I'm like, I'm not running behind him. Like, I need someone to run behind him. He's a kid. He's like, no, just be his uncle, man. Just be his uncle. And I'm like, bro, we told this kid we was gonna do all this shit for him, and now you're telling me just go be his uncle. Like, it's no accountability to these people who make all these promises. Meanwhile, they hold us upside down by our feet, saying, did you say what? What'd you say? And it's like, bro, like, it's so hard, because it's like, it's equivalent to the parents in the streets. Like, as a parent, you're trying to protect your kid from the streets, right? Whether it's, hey, don't listen to what they're saying. Hey, don't pay attention. You got to think for yourself. That guy is really not your friend just because he's handing you some weed or handing you, he's not your friend. And you're hoping that they're listening. And that's the hard part of what we do, because it's like, we see all the pitfalls and the hang-ups, and we're like, hey, please don't do that. Please. And they do it anyway. And then it's like, damn, now you wonder why there's only one Rihanna. There's only one Taylor Swift. There's only
Beyonce
one. Beyonce. There's only one, because they understand what they have to do. And you're never going to be that, because you don't want to accept what you have to do.
Right. And I tell artists too, as I said, listen, I'm not anti-label. I think the label's the right place for the right artist. If you want global, massive, but you need to understand and be okay asking for it at the beginning. I'm like, this is one of the few things where you better plan the divorce before the wedding happens. So make sure that you have everything that you need in order to be successful. And I said, and I'm telling artists this all the time, it's like, today, like you mentioned, the label's going to see something that's working. So I always say it's like they're going to acquire this restaurant that's killing it. There's lines out the door every night. The menu's awesome. Everybody loves this restaurant. Then the label is going to acquire this restaurant. And unfortunately, most of them aren't equipped to keep the restaurant running while inserting you into the label system, because you wanted your restaurant at the label because now you got bigger budgets. Now you got more money for creative. Now you've got all these things. But the problem is the labels are going to treat you like someone that Ray found at a club and developed from the baby stages of A&R that wasn't already a business that was moving. So now they're acquiring restaurants. They're shutting them down. They're changing the look of the restaurant. They're changing the best item on the menu. And then they're expecting it to just pick up like like when they bought it. And I'm like, that's what I'm telling the artists and these managers today. Don't be so excited that they found you. Make sure that they have a system that can keep you going. It may go from 6th gear to 5th gear for a second, but don't let it go into park. And too often it's going into park and they don't know how to get it out and start it back up again. And that's what I'm here to say to you guys is like, we've had the experience of being in the major label system. And like you said, first couple of years, it was fun. And then we saw that, wow, if you're a creative, talented go-getter, that's the wrong place for you to work.
Man.
Unless you're somebody who's willing to take instructions, bite your fucking tongue. And I'm not that guy. I'm like sushi. I'm an acquired taste. And I call bullshit early. So I tell people, I am not a good employee. I am the worst employee because I like to work. I don't like to argue. And that's what I told the label when he's like, man, you've been in here all week. I don't want you to get burned out. I go, I never get burned out when I'm seeing results. I get burned out when I'm having to fight with ignorant people that don't know shit because they always say, well, that's not the way we do it. Yep. I'm like, I'm out. I'll go back to golfing 5 days a week.
Well, why don't anyone ask, is it right? That's the part that bothers me.
Fear.
Like, no one, like, I'm like, bro, like when I worked at these labels, I remember 2015. It was weird because my first true label stint was 2013. I worked at Epic Records. And back then in 2013, we were signing what we wanted to sign. We were signing things that were buzzing, but it was one thing buzzing here and there. And I remember when I got my job at Interscope in 2015, I remember being like, damn, like everything we're looking at is we're chasing. Like there was nothing that we signed or even talked about that wasn't working. So I remember I saw the CEO or the president at the time, and I was like, hey, man, the revolution is happening outside, right in front of our doorstep. Like the revolution is taking place outside, and they're gonna eventually eat the rich if we don't open up our doors and try to figure out a way to bond with these people. And he was like, all right, yo. I was like, okay, listen, bro, I've been poor, and I know how the poor think.
Right.
I was once poor. The hardest thing I had to do in my life was change having a poor mentality, right? Once those people out there realize that you guys are chasing them, because the allure is us inside. The allure is we're in the building. Like they got to know the secret. They got to know the button that gets pressed. Well, there's no button. I mean, the button gets pressed for everybody every day. You know what I mean? So, you know, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, bro, like we have to start changing our approach. Almost like we have to almost do what politicians do, where now we're like, vote for Democrat or Republican. We damn near have to say, here's why you should vote for me. Right. Here's why you should vote for me. Most of the time they're saying I'm better than that guy because here's how he sucks. But if the messaging is here's what I'm going to do, that's how you're going to get better things, your message across in a better way. So, you know, when I'm talking to these artists, I'm like, I always tell artists, I'm like, I study winners for a living, Rick. I study living. So as a kid, I love wrestling, right? But here's the crazy part. We all knew it was fake. Right. But why do we still follow and invest in it? Because we love the stories and the characters. Right. Like we see ourselves in them. We see different people in them. So when I'm talking to artists, I'm like, or let's take boxing, for example. I just Mexican group signed to me. And we was like talking one day and I was like, you guys have to be Mexican. And they were like, we are Mexican. And I'm like, no. You have to be Mexican. And they was like, what do you mean? I'm like, let me ask you a question. Saw two guys in the ring fighting right now. And one had on Mexico colors and the other one had on another color. Who are you cheering for? The guy in the Mexican cup, right? Why? You don't know nothing about him. He can be the worst person in the world. You don't care. He's from where you're from. So artists, I'm like, why don't y'all do? And by the way, boxers don't talk. That's the interesting part about it.
Right.
It's not like you hear them talk. It's not like they talking for hours and hours before the fight. They just tell you that's where I'm from, and you see them training, and you gotta. But it's that fucking them shorts with the statement on it, who I'm from, or when they walking down the ring, someone with the flag behind them that tells people, take pride in me because I'm you. And I just think that artists just don't get the simplest things that you could do to win. It's just sometimes just say, hey, this is where I'm from, and this is what I do. And in the most subtle, easiest way to digest, and give people a chance to come to your doorstep, because they will.
Right.
But you got to show them. You got to show them silently who I am. Like, it's like when a wrestler comes out, you can tell the bad guys from the good guys, because the bad guys walk like bad guys.
And they play bad guy music.
Exactly. It's like, it's all there for. So I'm like, if you're an artist, why wouldn't you leverage building up the character the way wrestlers and boxers do, who we don't hear talk?
Right.
Right. So like, and here's the best part. You're making music for that same soundtrack.
Right.
Like, they got to fight. You don't have to, you just got to say, I'm Mexican.
And say, and you be that character is actually you. Taylor was a 16-year-old girl who was picked on in high school, who knew that every middle-aged girl was getting picked on too. So she said, you know what? I can't sing like Carrie Underwood and Miranda Lambert and Kelly Clarkson. I'm going to go tell their stories. And guess what? They sang the songs louder than she did. So they forgave the fact that she wasn't a good vocalist from 16 to 23. It's like, she didn't have to be the best vocalist. She told the best story, but more importantly, she told their story.
I'm about to say, but most importantly, she knew who she was.
Yes, and didn't chase. She didn't try to chase anybody else's audience.
I know there are girls like me.
Yes.
I'm going to write music that those girls feel.
Yep.
She made that song, It Feels So Good to Be 22. I was just thinking, like, how smart is that?
Yeah.
Like, how smart is that? Like, it was like, so every girl turning 22 is going to want to hear that song or want to get to that song. So for me, I don't know, man. I just think that the best artists are the smarter ones. Yes. And I think that only way guys like you and myself will ever get to where we know we belong is if we have that artist who is smart, and we're smart enough to know that that shit is once in a fucking lifetime.
Exactly. And I said something to somebody one time, as I said, you know what? I said, you go look at Beyonce, you go look at Jay-Z, you go look at Taylor. The difference between an A-list artist and a superstar is a superstar treated it like a business. Yep. They were able to adapt. They were able to say, okay, these are the best producers. This is the sound. There's a lot of it's not talent. Talent doesn't separate A-list from superstars. It's business acumen. It's surrounding yourself with the right people. It's knowing your business. It's not being afraid to piss some people off. It's not just conforming. And I think too many artists are conforming because what you said earlier, why doesn't somebody just say, that's not right?
Yep.
That's not right. And fortunately, you and I are in a position now to call out some people because we're not fearful of losing our job because we don't have a job. We are our job.
And we know the truth. And it's like, we can stand on that. Like, I don't have to worry about how you feel about what I'm saying. I know it's the truth.
But what's even more interesting is that I was talking with the president of a record label, and when I laid out, I said, let me just ask you this, just follow me here for a second. And I laid it out for him. I said, would you want to sign that deal? And he just kind of looked at me and he's like, I didn't even realize that's how it was. I said, think about it for a second. Let me ask the questions that your team is not willing to ask you based on somebody now who's living it on the outside. It's to say, if you're not giving an advance, why would you take the same percentage as someone you just gave an advance to? If someone's coming in and you have no out-of-pocket expenses and you're now making money from day one, even though it's 0.003, you now have a revenue stream. Why would you take the same percentage as somebody who came in and had zero revenue stream and needed everything? And he's like, fuck, that's because we've always done it. I said, you guys need to start adjusting. It's like why it took them so long to adjust contracts for streaming royalties. And now all of a sudden words like perpetuity started to mean something because all these new different things. So I'm like, all I'm ever trying to do is say, it's like, I can't fault someone for not knowing, but I can fault someone for not being willing to get the answers.
Yes.
And the answers are there, and the answers are available. And the smart labels will reach out and say, okay, Ray, we know you pissed a bunch of people off because you started, talking shit. But dude, what are you seeing out there that we're missing? Why is it that people that are signed to major labels are counting the days till they're out of their contracts?
Yep.
But the kid with no experience or doesn't know, is like, I got to get a label deal to be successful. I'm like, wait, Wiz Khalifa wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And he had a good experience. Most people are wanting to leave because they had bad experiences, but Wiz is a businessman. Wiz was like, wait, I don't need their help at radio anymore. Radio knows who I am. So I'll outsource everything that they were outsourcing. So instead of giving them a percentage to pay for that, I'll just keep the bigger percentage and use the littler part to pay for all those things. Thank you, Atlantic. I'm Wiz Khalifa. Good night. Mic drop. But so that's, I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
No, you're right. But it's funny because I told Steve Stout the same thing. I said, it's interesting that you have all these artists who are young and impressionable, if you will, run into labels. Meanwhile, you have the smart artists running from labels. So it's like at some point in time, I would ask people, but people might think, well, they got their success. No. They can still have more success if they want it. They just figured out that they are the machine now, and they don't need to. Like Wiz Khalifa can press a button and touch it and talk to more people than Atlantic can.
Yes.
Right now. So it's like, why wouldn't Wiz be someone who like does it on his own? Like, dog, like that's another thing. Like once you become the celebrity, you can leverage yourself in so many ways.
Sure.
Like my company is called LYI from that thought process. You wouldn't believe how many people I was talking to a successful artist manager, and he was telling me that they just re-signed with the label they re-signed with. And I was like, why? And he was like, man, that's what he wanted to do, man. So we did that, da-da-da-da-da. So I said, who you think has more influence? You or the company? Like, what you mean? I said, do you think that company can say something is dope and people buy into it? No, but you can. Drake can. A cosign from Drake is worth way more than a cosign from Lucien Grange.
Right.
So I was telling artists, I'm like, why are y'all giving all of y'all IP, all of y'all celebrity, y'all profile to these companies to leverage? Even if they making 10 cents off of you, you and I are smart enough to know that they're in the room telling the kid, you can be like him, and that kid is only making 10 cents off of that, compared to you who's getting 10. So it's almost like we're in this never-ending cycle. But what happened was that the outside world made a difference. So now where you had to like have a distribution deal and partnerships to put your music out, now everybody could put music out. And then we saw how much power they didn't have. Now it's like, now they're like, put your pitch tool, you got to 60% of your streams come from pitch tool in the first week of your release. So we need you to upload everything 6 weeks ahead of time. And it's like all of that. So it's like, when you start understanding, it's just an interesting world, man. But I just think that it's gonna be fun for the smart people. I tell everybody, say, Ray, what does the future hold? I'm like, I think it's gonna be about community, but I think it's gonna be about who's smart enough to know how to leverage their community, build their community, and use them to go get other dollars to do other things. I want to work with smart artists. I don't want to work with artists that's saying, why can't I do that? I want to work with artists saying, well, why don't we try this? And I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, why don't we try that? So that's what I've been looking for.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was telling somebody the other day, as I said, somebody said, why were you and Taylor so successful? I said, well, because we were too dumb to know any better. Exactly. I was the first-time manager. She was a first-time artist. And all I heard her say was, I wanted a gold record. I said, great, let's go meet 500,000 people. Where are they hanging out? On MySpace. So we spent all our time on MySpace. We knew we couldn't get radio. We knew we couldn't get on tours. So why would we spend the first 4 years crossing our fingers when we could go to work every day and meet these people?
Yes.
And that's how we go. Well, listen, I know you got a place you got to be. I just want to say thank you. I could do like a 10-part series with you. So I have tons of Southwest miles. How do I get on the God's couch?
You can come ASAP.